Hello, Dylan. You are up last.
Hey Bart, how's it going?
How's it going, Dylan? Where are you playing out of?
This is played out of an online private game.
Online private game, like on one of those apps?
Yeah, exactly.
And what's the size of the game?
It's 510 with a mandatory $20 straddle.
Do you know all the players in the game?
No, so the person that sort of runs the game is sort of like a friend of a friend. So I'm like partially staked as one of the players in this game.
I would be cautious, Dylan. I would be cautious of collusion. I would be cautious of RTA. One of the things about these private types of platforms is that's kind of been shown that there's very little security because the sites themselves aren't the ones that are, I mean, the sites usually the way that these private games are set up is like the person that puts the game together sort of has to pay the site in some way, but there's less incentive for some of these sites to have like really strong security as opposed to like a Poker Stars. By the way, though, too, again, the Club WPT Gold thing, when we had the free roll in Vegas and we got to do a CLP free roll and we played in some cash games. I mean, again, I can't speak highly enough of the people behind it. I know them personally. So that particular platform and the sweepstakes model, I have high hopes for because I know they're running security. But anytime you play in one of these setups, you just got to be cautious. How deep are you?
I am 3,500 effective.
Okay, 3,500 effective. Is this six-handed or what?
Yes, it's a six-handed.
All right, so no ante or anything?
No, there's no ante.
All right, so six-handed, 5, 10, 20. Okay.
So I am in the button and it folds to me and I raise it to 60 with Ace of Clubs, King of Hearts.
Okay.
And then the villain in the hand is in the big blind who three bets to 250.
And it gets back around to you?
Yep, and I call for 250.
Well, so the big blind three bets at 250. So it's interesting because I don't know if you know any stats on this guy. I just find that people tend to be more bluff happy and are more aggressive for the most part online. Just as a very, very general take here, you're at 5, 10, 20, 3,500 effective, which is, I suppose, just under, say, 200 big blinds. It's a button open, and this guy's three betting out of the middle blind where he should be V-pipping, three better fold because of the third blind behind him. I think if you ask me this hand in a vacuum, I'm four bet happy to get it in here in online poker.
Yeah, no, I definitely was considering a four bet. And, I think I personally sort of mix ace king offsuit. I think mainly I base it around, player type who I think he's three betting lighter or not, but I don't really have a read on this or any notes on this particular player. So I just sort of opted to call.
So hero calls. And it might be like a partial type of situation. Hero calls. So we're off to a flop of 500 and change, right? Maybe 520?
It's 525.
Okay. 525. Okay.
Yep. So the flop comes out queen, eight, deuce, all clubs.
Queen, eight, deuce, all clubs, and you have the ace of clubs. Okay. So you've got the nut flush draw and two overcards on a monotone board. In a late position, three bet pot where it's quite possible that the middle blind is playing three better fold pre. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is already when, I think there's sort of a decision that I had to make in the hand because the villain leads C bets for 75.
75.
Yeah, so very, very tiny.
Well, I was going to say that, again, people who are into solver land here, I mean, again, it's a 6 max setup, so it's a little bit different. It's a 6 max setup with three blinds, but it's definitely like not going to usually ever be like a large bet from the guy from out of position because, I mean, he did go to 4x, but it's a late position. He three bets. The ranges are wide, which is usually going to respect the fact that you're going to probably have more flushes than him. There shouldn't really be any two pair types of holdings. And I would expect that this monotone board would actually get checked a lot. So here he's going super, super small. So it's what, like 15% or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. It's very small. And I think sort of in the moment in the hand, I sort of, I kind of think of these small-ish sizings as more or less a check. So, in my mind, I think mainly I was just focusing on, since I have the ace of clubs, what would I do with my nut flushes? Or, I flop the nut flush here. And, I elected just to call mainly to see what he would do on a later street. I don't know if I should have maybe if I had enough flush, would I fast play this hand? But I sort of just thought, let him continue betting with, potentially worse hands
Well,
or bluffs.
I'm gonna flip that around on you, where I would say that, you holding ace king with the ace of clubs doesn't necessarily need to bluff. And then if you were trying to play it like you had the nut flush, I always think that like building a pot up, well, one of the best ways to win the most amount of money in live poker with the flopping the nut flush, especially in single raise pots, is actually by fast playing, because you usually get the most amount of action from inferior hands. Again, in an online format facing this type of sort of small sizing, there still has to be some frequency of raising the nut flush here for sure, especially against like really, really small sizing. So I think you're not always just calling with the nut flush, but I probably call here more often than raise for the reasons that I talked about before, which is you don't necessarily need to take this one and start a raise. It's interesting because like you're on the button, so how far down do you go in a 3-bet defense here? I mean, ace jack off has got to be it's got to be a defend against a middle blind 3-bet. I don't know if you're calling with ace 10 off, button open, big blind 3-bet. I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I probably just fold ace 10 offsuit to a 3-bet.
In a 6-max scheme, button open, big blind 3-bet. I mean, maybe. I'm just trying to see the other types of ace X of, what hands do you have here with ace of clubs X that are offsuit?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably my worst hand personally would be ace jack off. Yeah, and I mean, I think to your point, maybe ace 10 if I think this guy's a little bit of a maniac, but I think ace 10 off would probably be the worst hand I would call with.
So queen 8 deuce, monotone. Again, it's a 3-bet pot. Hero has ace of clubs, king of hearts. The big blind bet 75 into 525. The hero calls. The pot is 675, and you guys have just under 3,200 left. Okay.
The turn is the 10 of hearts.
The 10 of hearts.
Yep.
So you pick up a gut shot now to a jack. Okay.
And then the villain bets 450.
So now the big blind bets 450 here. It's interesting because I don't know, so from the villain's perspective here, first of all, you're blocking like aces and kings slightly, holding ace king. From the villain's perspective, is he supposed to be taking this line with something like ace queen, kings, or aces, where he goes super small, now 2/3? I mean, the 10 is not necessarily like the biggest brick in the world here. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily like the 3 of diamonds, but I think it's a little bit non-standard to see this type of sizing on a tiny bet followed by large bet on a monotone board on somewhat of a connecting turn card. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's what I've learned just from understanding these types of patterns. So it's a little strange, but from your perspective, it is kind of interesting because it's like, well, you're ahead of all his bluffs, right? Unless he's like doing something crazy, like betting like red 5s, right? Or red 6s and turning that into a bluff. Like sometimes the bottom part of a 3-betting frequency, like in the small pairs, are sometimes turned into bluffs. So, I don't know, again, if there's really necessarily a need for you to raise here in this particular spot, which is kind of like why I would be mostly calling here.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, I thought, I never really, got a sense of strength from such a small bet on the flop, so I kind of ruled out anything like queen. I thought, maybe with him taking this larger sizing on the turn, because like you're saying, like he could have 10-10, he's 3-betting, right, and just turn the set, and that was, betting larger for some value. I thought that, and then maybe some weaker hands being, 9-9, jack, also too, that, now him also picking up.
Are those hands betting the turn? Is 9 knack through jack betting the turn though?
Yeah, I mean, do you think he would just give up and check? Because I mean, isn't his hand pretty face up?
Not give up. It's just like a check and maybe like a check. It's just like if he has Jack, what is the like? He's beating everything except a queen. What's the point? What is he trying to bluff you off of like queen? You know what I mean? Like, and with Jack, you don't have much queen Jack. So, you know what I mean? So I assume you called again.
Yeah, I did call.
All right. So hero calls. I mean, the other interesting part here is that, or slightly interesting. So now the pot is 1575. If you had ace jack with the ace of clubs here, which would actually turn at a double gutter, right? Queen 8, deuce 10 to the 9 and to the king. There's always that slight chance that when you have no pair but don't have ace king, there's always that slight chance that your opponent might have ace king. So if you have ace jack, I could see merit to probably more merit to raising here if there is. I would rather have ace jack with the ace of clubs and raise turn here than ace king. Number one, because it's got more equity. And then slivers of time that you're losing to ace king. Here you have ace king. So I'm fine with the call. 1575 to the river. Okay.
Yep. And then the river is the queen of hearts.
Queen of hearts.
Yep. And the villain checks.
That's interesting. So the villain checks. So it wouldn't appear that, I don't know how often he's checking queen X here as played. Maybe I'm not sure. So you have the nut no pair here. Queen 8 deuce, again, it's queen 8 deuce monotone. It's a 3-bet pot here. It's not 4-bet pre, late position open, big blind 3-bet. Hero calls the small bet on flop, turns a 10. So queen 8 deuce 10. Big blind bets 450, hero calls 1575. River is a queen, and now villain checks. The issue here is that if villain sometimes has queen X, I don't think he's folding. If villain sometimes has like kings and aces, because again, I question if he has Jack here, I don't know if he's folding. You get to the river here with, what did we say here on the river? You've got what, like, what did we say, like 2,900 behind or something? Or
yeah, sorry, I kind of misspoke at the beginning of this call. I actually cover the villain, so he has like one SPR going to the river, so he has like 1,500 in the stack.
So he has 1,500 in his stack after, so 5,
on the river.
750. So he started with like maybe 2,400, not 35.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. We'll change it. So one SPR. So he's got about 1,500. So, if he arrives here with aces and kings, I'm not sure if he's folding, if he's checking sometimes a queen or any other cagey types of things. We talked about something like Jack. I don't know if those hands are betting. So you tie, you tie with ace king, right? If you had ace king with like the king of clubs or something like that. I mean, you can boil this one down sometimes into a situation where you might be ahead some of the time or tie with his give ups. And then the hands that are ahead of you, he's not folding. If that's the case, then I don't think you can bluff here. If you had ace jack and didn't raise the turn, there might be merit to bluffing to try to bluff him off of ace king. Is there anything else that he ever has here where we check back and lose that he would somehow fold to? Well, I might go back to, I guess, the slivers of hands that are like the very, very bottom part of his bluffing range, like small pairs or, I don't know, like ace deuce of diamonds or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, those would be hard for him to call.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference with how you're sort of breaking this hand down from when I was thinking about it in game was, I thought that, maybe he would take this line with like hands like I mentioned, like 9-9 and Jack. But if you're sort of ruling that out for making sense for, kind of what you're explaining,
Right.
like why would he, bet large on the turn? I sort of came to the same conclusion around, like I don't think, if I jam, right, I don't think he's going to fold with the queen and then any sort of overpair. right? Like, do I take this line with Queen X even, right? I don't.
Again, and the other thing too is that see, it's kind of weird, right? So he's got a pot size bet left. I don't know always, like in theory, like if aces or kings here from his perspective are called here, if you jam at the end, if you have enough Queen X, slow played flop flushes, some 10-10, but you do block him having aces and kings. And then there's the other thing here too is that like, does he ever check Queen X some of the time or have some sandbags? Yeah, I mean, I think that the Jack 9-9 portion doesn't play where it is on turn. So I would say in a situation like this where the hands that you're behind to are mostly going to call anyways, and you might actually win or tie, I think I would probably just check it back.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what I sort of decided on, and
Uh,
I checked back the river. Yeah, I just mostly wasn't sure if there's any, because I know you're supposed to take like some of these like ace X holdings and yeah turn them into bluffs on the river. But yeah, considering that the board pairs with the queen, it was just kind of yeah, I wasn't sure really what to do here.
Now this is not the best example, but I do remember a situation. God, I'd have to dig it up. I don't know if I can dig it up and put it. It was during my. There are certain situations where you can read a hand where you know that you and the villain both have ace king, and you can actually like get the guy off of a chop. This is probably not one of those examples because I think he might have other types of holdings here, and he's going to be checking other stuff here too. So you check behind and?
Yeah, the reveal is a little surprising to say the least. He has 4-4 with the four of clubs.
Oh no! Wow. So he had one of those hands, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I don't know. Yeah, I played a little bit more with this player, and I think kind of seeing some of the hands and the way that he plays, I think he's a little bit more of like that maniac type of player. So I mean, I think looking back on it, maybe there's a lot more merit to jamming, knowing that. But at the time, I didn't. But yeah, I guess yeah, when you factor in all that other sort of low pair, maybe kind of quote unquote garbage that he might have, there's more merit to jamming.
By the way, I don't think even if he's, like if you could see what he had like transparently, like if I was in your spot and I knew he had 4-4, of course, yes, you should bluff because he can't really call. He can never because he can lose accidentally somehow. Like say you had like, I'm trying to think of what would you call across turn here that would need to like turn into a bluff. I was looking at like the 8x portion that didn't have a club. How would you get across the turn with like 9-8 or 7-8 or jack? Kind of hard for you to call 7-8 of diamonds across turn for 450 or
Yeah,
jack 8. I'm just trying to think of any. It's just very, very bad for a bluff catching hand from your villain's perspective if he sometimes loses to a bluff from you.
yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I was like, obviously, I think that's a like, I think thinking about it that way is like a little results oriented, obviously, but yeah, I just wasn't sure if there's any merit to again,
Yeah.
jamming the river, or, kind of again on the flop. Should I have, maybe thought about raising that small bet?
Well, again, usually like your hand with the nut flush draw and sort of nut non-pair wouldn't necessarily be the best candidate for me to start running a gigantic semi-bluff because it doesn't necessarily need to be because it has enough showdown value anyways. Plus, there's also some possibly implied odds value in him actually having a club and it coming out a little bit in that factor. And then, on the and then just like moving across, to the end, there are some hands that have no showdown value that you're going to play aggressively because they can't win if they don't hit. And then there are other hands that are nut draws that can sometimes even win sometimes when they don't hit that you don't need to bluff. I think that's kind of the category. And this was just maybe a little bit of a bad sliver of variance.
Yeah, I guess one question that I had though was, if for example I had like ace queen of diamonds or something like that, and I'm facing such a small bet on the flop. Do you think you're ever raising that kind of bet with like top pair, top kicker?
I don't know the answer in theory with what these ranges are supposed to be. I know that in position you are allowed to raise really, really small bets, even in 3-bet pots for protection. But on a monotone board,
Yeah, exactly.
what I've learned is that there's almost always some sort of mixes of things. And the smaller the bet, the more, like you said, you can kind of treat it like a check. So if he checked queen eight deuce all monotone and you've got ace queen of diamonds and that's sometimes bet when checked to, I would imagine versus a tiny bet, it could possibly be sometimes raised as well. But the other thing though too is that you don't, the other sort of very, very simple concept is whether it's bet fold flop or like, raise fold for value. A lot of times you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you open the betting up on the flop with a hand that wants to continue that you're forced to fold. So we, of course, in live poker, we teach a lot of like robust bet fold strategy because people call too much and they raise nowhere near enough. But theoretically, you're not really supposed to be taking hands and bet folding them. In theory, on the flop, you're supposed to be putting those types of hands that don't want to bet fold into a check call range. So, in that particular situation, you could make the same argument for like ace queen and diamonds not wanting to raise because it doesn't want to get blown off the hand. Thank you very much. I appreciate the call.